The holiday seasons are meant to be a joyful time with your family and friends, but we all know they come with all of the comments, the behaviors, the things that trigger the shit out of you. So if you're ready to set boundaries this holiday season, welcome to the Mindset Mirror Connection podcast. In today's episode, we're going to walk you through a 10-step process on how to set boundaries with your family and friends. So if you're ready, listen up and lean in as we elevate your mind.
Yay.
Boundaries. This time of year can be so triggering. You could do all of the work, you could have all the things in place, and then you get in front of your mother and boom. I was listening to a podcast and they were talking about this spiritual guy, guru, goes to India, works under monks, does all of these things, feels very enlightened until he gets home and his father picks him up from the airport and he says, "Have you gotten a job yet?" And all of his enlightenment went out the window, you know?
Yep.
And so I was like, oh, we should probably talk about this. I mean, I've already kind of touched on it during Thanksgiving, but just more specifically, the steps of doing this. So, you know, boundaries are essential. And I want to talk, because we have a new baby, right?
Yeah.
About your baby's boundaries.
Okay.
Your child has one of the abilities she has is the ability to say no. She has the ability to say no. She has the ability to express her anger. She has the ability to say, I don't like this. She was born with that ability. And guess what? All of us are. Talk to me about Livy's no-ness.
Well, she'll say, like, if she's done eating, she'll be like, no, I'm done. And then
how does she do it?
She just goes like this.
She pulls away, right?
Yeah, pulls away, makes a face. She also tells me when she doesn't like something. So like sometimes changing her diaper, she really doesn't like, but that's getting better. But that's about it. Other than that, she's a pretty easy baby right now. And just very noisy.
Does she not want grandma or grandpa sometimes?
Nope, she doesn't care. That's why I've literally asked Michael, I'm like, do you think if she even knows who I am? And he's like, no. And I'm like,
that's fucking dumb.
I'm just like, ow. He goes, she will. And I'm like, okay.
Knows who you are. You want to see if she knows who you are? Leave her for an hour. Come back.
So?
Yeah, it's called attachment.
It's hard for me to leave her. I have to be like, it's okay. Like, it's great. Get out of the house. It's so silly because I never thought, like, again, I would think that. I thought I'd be like, oh, yeah, I'm going to get out of the house. But it's like when I come back, I'm like, oh, my gosh. Hi. I miss you.
See? So we are born with boundaries.
Mm-hmm.
She has them. It's not until our no is taken away from us.
Oh.
Our no is taken away from us when we say no to something, like I don't want to eat that, or I don't want to give that person a hug, or, you know, no, I'm tired, you know, things that kids say, and we say, no, you're going to do it.
Right.
Or give the person a hug, or, you know, just a few more bites.
Yeah.
And it takes away our no-ness, or you're praised for certain things, you're criticized for certain things. So you don't express yourself, right? Or you're like the good child, so you don't express yourself. So you're taking away the no.
Mm-hmm.
You're taking away the boundary. And for so many of us, you know, it's funny. I was on the Mind Pump forum, and I have this actually a call with this individual today, and she was talking about her very rigid schedule, eating schedule, workout schedule. You know, and this person said, well, she listened to one of the podcasts, the Mind Pump podcast I was on. She goes, well, I don't have like this significant trauma. Mm-hmm. And of course, I'm not going to explain this to her on a Facebook forum of like trauma. Those big traumas are rare.
Yeah.
The little T, as my client Kelly said, because we talked about this, she goes, yeah, it's death by paper cut trauma. And I'm like,
yeah,
genius. Like, and it's those little nicks of like taking your no away, taking your no away, taking your no away. And as we can see, boundaries are essential, right? Like they were there, they were taken away from us. Now we need to figure it out again. And again, the holiday season is the perfect place to try this. So let's talk about why boundaries are essential. Number one, they conserve your energy.
Mhm.
And people who don't have a boundary system, it requires a lot of energy to establish this. But once it's established, you're giving people a play by play on what you need,
Right.
right? You are avoiding building resentment. You're avoiding unnecessary conflict. You're avoiding frustration, play by play, right?
Mhm.
Gives them a roadmap. So for the holiday season, right? When you're, okay, I've got to go to the grocery store and the mall, if those still exist.
Okay,
It's hard to say
1982 is
that now.
calling.
Yeah, Home Alone is calling.
Yeah.
Or I have to go to the grocery store, my kids' holiday party
Yeah.
that they just told me about, and we need cookies and all of the things, right? Maybe
Uh-huh.
your boundary is with your partner and saying, "Hey, today is really crazy. Can you help me with this?"
Right.
Right? Or can we I'll give an example. Again, Mark and I go to couples therapy, and you and Michael go to everyone should go to couples therapy.
Yeah.
And we talked about, he goes, well, sometimes when I go and walk in on her, she gives me this short response.
Uh-huh.
And then I said, and he's like, and then I feel like she's mad at me.
Well, because you asked a dumb fuck question.
No, because your girl has ADHD.
Yeah.
And when you walk into my brain, when I'm focused on something else,
Uh-huh.
I'm going to give you the shortest answer, because what am I trying to do?
Said
Stay
boundary?
focused.
Oh, yeah.
Stay focused.
Uh-huh.
Try to remember this thing over here.
Uh-huh.
And I tell you blank, boom. And then I told him, I said, I'm giving you the answer. I said, you're walking in on me in thought, and my brain doesn't work that way. So I give you the shortest answer so I can keep my thought going. And that was a boundary that I like, a mental boundary that I needed to set with him, not realizing I needed to set with him. He needed to set a boundary with me of like, hey, I feel this way. And they're like, well, you need to maybe just text me. And so that was the boundary. Like, text me what you need. And then when I have the time, I'm done with my thing, I can text you back.
Yeah.
Which I should probably not be on Do Not Disturb all the time. You guys are like, can you answer a fucking message? I'm like, I'm on Do Not Disturb.
Yeah.
So gives a play-by-play. Well, what else would you add to this?
Well, I think that's a good point of conserving your emotional energy of like, I have to be able to focus on this. And if you come in and disrupt that, then and this isn't like a knock on Mark, obviously we love Mark.
No.
But it's like when you come in, it knocks on the energy that I have available for this. But now I have to deal with the emotions that you feel when this happens. And let's just avoid this situation because it's not necessary.
Right.
For me right now, like a lot of my like conserving energy and emotionally is relying on Michael. It's so annoying because I can refill my own water bottle. I can cook my own turkey for the week to have like to pull for breakfast and whatnot. But like I can't because I'm breastfeeding. So I can't get up and like get water and stuff like that. Or like she starts crying. So I need to go and tend to her. So I can't finish cooking the turkey. So I'm asking him a lot to do stuff that I'm capable of doing. Right. And it gets hard because I have to remember like, yes, I can do it, but I don't need to. And he is here. And we talked about this beforehand, before the baby was here, of like how he can help. And so to conserve my energy and focus, like, because my role is mostly on her and her caretaking, whereas his role is mostly on me and my caretaking.
I love that.
Well, because like she can't feed off his nipples. Like, you know what I mean?
Ridiculous.
So like he can only he helps, like I'll tell him like, why don't you burp her, you know? And so that way I can just like take a break. So it's just allocating your resources appropriately. And I think we've talked about that extensively of like your knobs and your buckets and whatnot. And so even like to our next point, I find this essential for us is because we are I'm growing emotionally on how to not think of myself as like, this is stupid that I can't get my own water, or like that it's ridiculous that I'm asking him for the 5th time today to refill my water bottle. Like I'm trying to remember that this is part of what we decided as a couple, and where I'm able to rely on him in a way. So I'm like being in a vulnerable position.
For help.
Yeah. And ask for help, which I don't like to do. And you don't like to do either. So it's again, how we are staying aligned for what we were we were set out to do when we weren't in this vulnerable position. And I think
Right.
similar to you and Mark, like you guys decided to do XYZ. So that way, when you're in this vulnerable position, he's feeling this emotionally, and you're like, I don't have the capacity to deal with this right now. I'm trying to focus on this task. We're avoiding that because of something we decided in a neutral state.
Right. Well, exactly, because what he wasn't doing is being vulnerable, and it wasn't until he and I talked about it that this bothers him, which then causes him to be on the defense throughout the day. So then if I make a comment about something else, he reacts in a certain way, right? Vulnerability is that intimacy, into me, you see. And boundaries are saying, this is my perspective. On our break between episodes, I had a client reach out and she's like, my boyfriend, his mom is around. He's being a little bit snippy towards me. How do I deal with this? Right. Yeah. And we talked about it. It's like, have you shared this with him? She goes, well, I'm afraid he's going to say why I'm stressed. I go, that's great. He gets to that's his vulnerability.
Right.
You get to share yours too. It's not one-sided. Just because he's stressed doesn't mean that you can also have your needs met, or at least be heard. Right. Be seen and heard. And so again, we talk about conserving emotional energy by being able to take what you're feeling inside and putting it out to that person and saying, this is my reality.
Right.
This is how I'm perceiving this, or what I need right now, what I want right now, whatever that is. It's literally giving them here's the direction. And it's up to them if they can meet that boundary or not. Or like Mark and I can't in my brain right now. Could I practice this over time? Sure, but it's not going to happen immediately. Stop, talk, come back, remember. It's just not how I work. But what I can do is get a text, finish my thing, calmly respond back to the text, right? Because I'm already short in texts because of that reason. Yeah. You know this. Amanda thought I was mad at her too. People are like, you're such a bitch. I'm like, no, I really struggle mentally. I don't think you understand.
It's a mental issue, not.
Yes. I'm not mad at anybody. Yeah. I'm like, blah. Sometimes I'm like, say hello. I have to tell myself that, say good morning. Even though
you know what? It's so funny when you do that to me. I'm like, okay, Christina.
I'm trying.
I know. I'm like, she's trying. I'm like, okay, good morning. Hello. Hola.
I'm going to write all of those to you. Yeah. But again, when you are expressing yourself, especially during the holidays, what we're doing is we're staying in alignment with our values. When we stay in alignment with our values, that is the kryptonite for experiencing shame.
Right.
And that is wonderful. The other thing is it's going to improve your self-esteem. You're trusting yourself. You're saying, I deserve to be seen and heard. I deserve to be vulnerable and ask for help. Everyone deserves that. Right. Again, it's a continuum. So we have people who are overly dependent, who only ask for help from other people because they've never learned it. So they just are constantly looking for someone to teach them. Or we have the anti-dependent, who are people who have helped everyone else. And they're like, I'll just figure it out myself. And what we want to teach you guys is that middle ground of, you can try it yourself. You could try to do all those things you said yourself, but eventually you're like, this is now at the expense of me.
Right.
So I need to ask for help.
Right.
Right. So it creates that trust, which creates value, your own value in yourself. And that in itself increases your self-esteem.
Yeah. And I think it's so hard because the self-esteem might come into kind of battle with when you're setting these boundaries around family and friends for this time of year, where they might have, like you were saying, getting on the defensive about it. But I would challenge you to think that's going to build up your resiliency, and that's going to build up that self-esteem of continually setting that boundary. And when we're building on that, that makes the next year easier, or the next interaction easier. Or honestly, when someone keeps, because they don't cross the boundary, you let them cross the boundary. But when someone keeps I guess commenting on the boundary or, being on the defensive about it, it just makes you more aware that that's why I have that boundary because they
Yeah.
do
Oh,
it,
good.
right? Like,
Mhm.
because you think like, oh, I don't know. And then they do it and you're like, okay, well, that's why the fuck I do this because this is ridiculous that I even have to be in this situation.
Mhm.
And so it just creates that like resiliency and that like we're talking about this self-esteem and then your growth and opportunity and then setting more boundaries in other aspects of your life too, not
Yeah.
just around the holidays.
So I was doing a training the other day,
Uh-huh.
and she introduced a concept to me that I understand, but she created a word for it, and it's called motivational empathy.
Uh-huh.
So when you were saying that, I thought of someone who our clients would be like, well, when I set the boundary, then my mom is like, oh, I can't talk about that, or oh, I'm a terrible grandma because I asked for that.
Uh-huh.
Motivational empathy uses guilt or emotional manipulation to control others. It weaponizes empathy to avoid accountability or force compliance, and recognizing a need. That's not part of it. So this motivational empathy is about that. So when that person is saying, "Oh, I'm such a bad grandma that she won't let me," they're looking for you to almost guilt you into empathizing with them, rather than them just saying, this is her boundary, right?
Mhm.
I have empathy towards her. It's
Right.
not about me. I have compassion. And this whole, we should probably do a podcast on this, was all about narcissistic parenting and
Let's
how
do
that causes self gaslighting.
Okay, I'm adding that.
Yeah.
Because I also want
good.
you to do a podcast on like how not to fuck up your kids.
Oh, we put it in there.
I know.
Our girl Kelly asked us to do that.
Yeah. Well, thanks Kelly for the reminder.
Yay. So when, again, like you're saying, remembering why I have this boundary in place. And when you see that person trying to like talk shit about your boundary or put your boundary down or whatever that looks like, remember that is their shit.
Yes.
That is not your shit. I wrote a book called Don't Hold Their Poop on this exact thing. Don't Hold Their Poop by CJ Hathaway. You can get it on Amazon. They're trying to hand you their emotional shit in that moment. Mom's inability to not make it about herself.
Yeah.
Right? Not be in control. You being more emotionally mature than mom and her not being able to handle that. And then trying to make you feel emotionally mature by this weaponizing of the guilt. So great little input for that. I was hoping to throw that in there. So there's 8 different types of boundaries, all equally as important. I wouldn't say equally. There's one that's incredibly important over all of them. We have time boundaries, right? So like me this morning when I couldn't get to the gym, like I woke up late, the coffee wasn't made, and I was like, okay, I actually had to create a time boundary with myself. I'm like, could I go to the gym? Yes. But what would I feel like afterwards?
Rushed and anxious.
Rushed and anxious. I said, it is better for you to stay here, stay home. And also I believe in like something's telling you not to fucking go there. So like when all these dominoes keep falling, you're like, maybe I should stay home. So a time boundary. And the same is true. And I talk about this like so for example, last night I had a client say, hey, can I give you a call? She's going through it. One of my life coaching clients. And I said, not right now. I'm on a call. I can call you at 5 and I have a hard stop at 5:30. She said, okay. So we took that time. And I knew in that moment, like I'm fed, I've went to the bathroom, I have water, right? And I'm pretty caught up with my tasks. So I can have this moment with her, this additional time. But if I didn't, so I had another client call me or ask if she could call me right now. And I said, no. I said, I'm podcasting right now, so that's a time boundary. Yeah. Physical boundary is how close people can be to you. I think of children. We oftentimes break this boundary. We don't give them a choice in physical boundaries of saying, especially in the holidays, like if they don't want to fucking hug someone, don't make them hug them. Yeah. Teach them that their bodies are their bodies. They have their own choice in what they do with those bodies. If someone has a motherfucking problem with that, then that is that person's problem. Do a fist bump, do a handshake, do a wink, do a sign, do something. Like teach that child, like, and tell the family, like, we have 5 different ways to interact with people. One is a wink, and that means that she's just not ready to get closer to you. The next one is a fist pump. The next one is a handshake. The next one is a hug. The next one is a kiss. She will fucking choose that, and she may not choose the same one every time, and you need to be okay with that. And if you're not, you don't get to get access to her.
Mm-hmm.
Sorry. I get really pissed at shit like that.
Hop off.
I
was thinking I have no boundaries with my child because I'm always in her face, kissing her and like.
Well, if she's saying no.
No, she doesn't.
She's not though. She says, "Mommy."
Yeah.
I interrupt this episode to bring you our December promo, and this is our introductory offer on the Mindset Method Movement, our revamped group coaching program. This program is unlike any other group coaching program out on the market and is going to be priced so competitively because we want everyone to take advantage of this. In our program, you will begin working from the inside out on your relationship with your body, food, and self-worth through the Mindset Method curriculum. In my Mindset of Matter app, every Monday, you will receive a reflection that will help you work through why you struggle with control over food, why your food noise is so loud, why you hate the image you see in the mirror. Then from there, you get to take the information that you've learned and bring it to 1 of 2 coaching calls per week. Yes, per week. And for those who sign up now, you'll be working directly with me. So you get to process all of that stuff with yours truly. You'll also get access to our on-demand training program that includes gym, at-home, time crunch, body weight, and core workouts that change every single month and all build on each other to basically create the body of your dreams. You will get custom nutrition coaching from one of my expert coaches, depending on your specific needs, whether that's autoimmune issues, peri-post menopause, prenatal or postnatal, or general nutrition. We have someone here at the Mindset That Matter for you. And last but not least, you will have access to an amazing community of like-minded individuals who are looking to do something different in regards to changing their relationship with themselves mentally and physically. And for this introductory offer, we are offering our group coaching program for $275 a month with a 30-day cancellation notice. This is literally the same price that other coaching programs charge just for nutrition coaching. And if you sign up in December, you will be moved right into our Winter Wellness Challenge. You're going to jump right in, and we're going to do that at no additional cost. So you can start working with us today at no additional costs. So if you're ready to change your relationship with yourself through your mindset, through your movement, through your nutrition, check out the show notes below for more information. Now, back to the show. Mental boundaries. Talk about it.
I would say that's essentially what we're talking about, of like my mental energy towards certain things, of like even work and work task, right? Especially around, this time of year, because I noticed with clients, they either feel 1, I'm totally clocking out, or 2, I've got to get all this shit done by the end of the year and my boss is on me. Yes. And more likely it's the shit done because you can't clock out. And so what happens is that mentally creates a load, right? And so they're taking on more and more tasks, not realizing like this isn't in your job description. You don't need to be doing this job. If, for example, Christina didn't do XYZ, that's not on you to make up for her inability to do that. Like that's something that you either need to go to management for, or you need to let it be rather than trying to take it on, or go and talk to them if you have a good relationship with them. So I see that a lot with work, more so. Mentally, I would say this is not a good time to like try and restructure your relationships with your parents and just kind of get through the holidays and then decide to do it. You know what I mean? Like I have some friends and some clients who are like trying to work on their relationship with their parents, and the holidays already add stress. Then work is stressful because it's end of the years and things are due. And then financially it gets stressful. Like maybe this mentally isn't the time. So setting a boundary of like, I don't need to work on these relationships right now. It can be on pause. That doesn't mean I don't ever work on it, but just right now I don't have that energy available.
Right. Well, mental energy too can be like you're talking about, like setting that internal boundary with yourself. Like I know that my mom is not capable of not making comments about other people's bodies.
Yeah.
What mental boundary I will set for myself is to remind myself that that has nothing to do with me.
Right.
You know, I explain like learning where you stop and someone else begins, especially from a mental and emotional standpoint.
Mhm.
You had mentioned, when walking on eggshells around you, right? If you've grown up in that environment and mom has always kind of dictated how
Mhm.
the energy in the room, right? And you're trying to move away from that, you're not going to change mom,
Right.
but you can change how you perceive it. I heard something the other day and I think it's brilliant. Trauma is not what happened to us. Trauma is what happens after something happens to us. Like how we
Perceive
what we
it.
do with it in our head.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yes. And about ourselves.
Yeah.
Right. And I talked about this in the trauma episode of like, I've seen children go through the shit. They're not good shit, bad shit.
Mhm.
And their parents show up for them, keep them safe, show them they're valuable, show them they're gonna, believe
Yeah.
them. Their reality is true. All those things we talk about. And the kids are okay.
Yeah.
It's when the reality is not safe, they're not believed, they're shamed, right? That's
Yeah.
when it becomes an issue because it's not what happens to them, it's what happens after what happens to them.
Mhm.
And so that's mental, spiritual boundaries, boundaries around your reality. So
Mhm.
this one's a little bit harder for people to understand. So, and your spirituality. So I think of like some of the there's two ways I'm going to explain this. Some of the recent political, like the abortion ban, right?
Yeah.
I personally believe that's a religious thing that's being projected onto me, right? So
Mhm.
like for me, that's a spiritual boundary because I'm like, your religion believes that, but I don't necessarily believe that. So like, right? But it's being enforced on me. So I think that that's a boundary violation.
Mhm.
But spiritual violation that more people will understand is your relationship with yourself and your higher power is your own. And what that means is how you make sense of the world, right? Your perceptions, your realities, your wants, your needs, those are all about your being,
Mhm.
right? And your existing. And when someone says that's wrong, right? Then you're wrong. Your
Mhm.
existence is wrong. So that one can get a little bit muddy. We won't touch on that today. But that's a part of that spiritual boundary. And then the biggest one, the one I think is most important, is sexual, of course.
Yeah.
People are probably like physical, sexual. No, to me, they're different.
Yeah.
You can make out with someone. You can go to third base and then still say no.
Yeah.
And that's the boundary,
Right.
Boundary around talking about certain things. I have a client right now who's going through it because she went to a party and one person was really inappropriate, which
Mhm.
caused a conflict in her own relationship. And that sexual boundary wasn't there for him specifically. So it can be a physically sexual boundary,
Yeah.
a boundary for
Intimate
your
sexual
ears.
boundary. Yeah.
Mhm, exactly. And then we have intellectual and material boundaries. Materials like don't steal my shit. Intellectual is don't steal my brain shit.
Mm.
Did you know that?
No, I wouldn't have thought like the time physical, mental, spiritual, I was like, I don't even know how, but I think you explained that well in sexual, but the intellectual and material, when I saw those in the notes, I was like, I don't even know how to explain those boundaries other than material, like, yeah, don't steal my shit, but then intellectual.
Can I give you an example?
Yeah.
And this is a true fear of mine, not from you.
Okay.
That someone's going to come through our program, go through our method and steal it.
Oh, fucker.
It's intellectual property. It's my brain. Like
on there.
I didn't. Now, I follow a theory around trauma and childhood development that others that I follow. So like your Nicola Perez, your Gabor Mates, your, what was the lady's name? Katie McKenna. Great book that I'm going to read from her called It's Not Your Fault.
Oh.
It's about narcissistic parents. We all have the same theory. It's kind of cool. It actually is really cool because I'm like, wow, like that's literally how I think about this. And you think about that. And you're like really smart. not that I'm not smart, but you know what I mean? Like you have all these.
Yeah. We're like, oh, I am kind of smart. That's nice.
Yeah. Like, great.
I forgot
I'm
I
not
had
lost in
intelligence.
what you're saying. I not only understand it, but I teach it,
Uh-huh.
But the method is my intellectual property.
Right.
And well, the funny thing is you can try to steal it, but you're not going to learn, you're not going to know how to teach it.
Yeah.
So that's intellectual property. And so all of these things are shaped though, boundaries are there. They're shaped, again, we start with them, but then they're kind of molded from our heritage, our culture, personality type, our life experiences, and our family dynamics, whether they allowed for us to be seen and heard, meaning that our realities were accepted and allowed, or for most of us, our realities were shaped and molded into a way that either our parents wanted them to be or based off of our parents' inabilities to have boundaries themselves. And so oftentimes, in our cultures, for example, holiday traditions are a thing that we may need to set boundaries on, right?
Yeah.
Food traditions, we may need to set boundaries on. Expectations from the family, we need to set boundaries on. But then also the complicated side, which is the emotional shit, the family, the multi-generational trauma.
Yeah.
I'm thinking of one client, hopefully she's listening to this. She's already been through the program, but like grandma, mom, aunts, everyone's body focus. Yeah. So let's get into the 10 steps, shall we?
Okay.
The one thing that we want you guys to understand before we get into the steps of setting boundaries is you have the right to set a boundary. So I want everyone, let's all say that together. I have the right to set a boundary. I deserve it.
Have the right to set a boundary.
You deserve it.
I deserve it.
You have a right to your time.
I have a right
your
to my
energy.
time. My
Okay.
energy.
Your energy, your comfort,
my comfort.
Even during the holidays.
Even during the holidays.
Yay.
Hey.
That's step one. Because guess what? If you don't believe that, none of this shit matters.
No. And I would say so I have an example of this with Michael's family is they like to get together for quite some time. And a get together, they're like a 2 like if the party starts at 5, they like to get together at 2 and then stay around for 11, where my family's like party starts at 5, we'll show up at 5:01, leave at 7.
Yeah.
And so I had to be like, him and I had to have a chat of like, I physically and mentally, emotionally do not have the energy to be present from 2 to 11. So where does that look like for you? Do you want me to come earlier, stay later? Like, what does that look like for you? Yes. And it's really important that him and I have this conversation. And it sounds silly because we've been together on and off for as long as we have, but like every holiday that we go to Texas, him and I have a conversation of like, what is your expectation of me at this time?
Good.
And then we go, okay. And I say, yes, I can do that. Or no, like, this is what I was thinking. And so one of the things that we do is like, I get to go to the gym and I go in the morning usually before everybody's awake. And that helps me kind of go, okay, so I've got this and he expects this, which I can meet because I was able to have this freedom of choice. But he also knows I'm not staying up till 11, like just to hang out. Like I will come at 2 when the party starts at 5, but I'm going to clock out probably around 9. And that's taken us time to respect both of each other's desires and wishes, but also understand like there's a reason why you set those boundaries with a significant other walking into that situation, because it only leads to like a fight or decreased energy. And then you're getting these like hostile kind of comments or something like that when it's just having that conversation before
taking away from your emotional energy, right?
Yeah. And so even like, again, going back to the vulnerability of having that conversation, like I'm afraid to hurt his feelings of like, because he takes it as like, I don't want to hang out with them. And I'm saying, no, I don't mind hanging out with them. I just don't have the availability of energy wise to keep hanging out, especially
with anyone for that amount of time.
For anybody, because I just don't like, I'm just So
that's who you are. No,
that's how
I think that's a great example.
My life.
Well, especially when you're stretched thin on the holidays, right?
Yeah.
Like I can come, like your family does this thing all day long. Like I'm just really stressed right now. I'll be there at this time. I'm going to leave at this time.
Right.
I feel like I do that very well because I only like people in certain increments of time, especially people who trigger me. So I set those boundaries. Funny thing is that while you were talking, I was thinking about when we go to Pittsburgh, like the things I love when we go to Pittsburgh is on Christmas Eve, we open up little stocking stuffers and we haven't done this in a while, but that the kids give us, and they do it in their like Santa shop at school. So they would buy us like the cutest little knickknacks and stuff, and they'd wrap them up, and they get so excited to like watch us open them. But then the next day we'd wake up and we'd go to my brother-in-law's family's house. And it was it was not pleasurable for me, nor Mark.
Yeah.
Not because of them. They're wonderful humans. But it's kind of this, we've traveled across the country to come spend time with our family.
Right.
Right. And not to discount his experience, but and so we started setting some boundaries around that. Like, we won't go with the family. We'll go on our own.
That way we can leave when we want.
Right, exactly. Yeah. So we'd still do it, or sometimes we would take the red eye and we would just sleep through it. But good. 10 steps for setting boundaries. Here we go. Number 1, know what the fuck you want.
Yeah. Get clear.
Know what you want. Now, when we are setting a boundary, we have to think about what we are experiencing, how the thing affects us. We never want to get into the finger pointing of someone else, because that's not vulnerable. That's actually critical.
Right.
Like you said, I don't have the capacity. My energy levels deplete at this time. They don't deserve to have me half-ass, right?
Right.
I, always about me. Okay. So do you need time for yourself? Are you feeling overwhelmed? Do you, when Auntie Crazy is there, do you need to have your husband and you like go for a walk during that time?
Right.
Right. Or be outside with the kids, like being away from the person. Know specifically what you want. Okay. And thinking about that from a mental, all of the 8, emotional, time, spiritual, physical, thinking about it from that way. Very, very important. Number 2, as we've said already, give yourself permission to ask for it.
Yep. This is when, like, practice it in your head, like, because if initially when you find that you need to set boundaries, it's going to be very scary to say them, especially if you haven't been setting boundaries before. But just practice it in your head. Don't try and like play out the situation, because I do see clients do that, of like where they start to spiral. It's like, just get your phrase and practice it, say it, and then let it be done. Don't try and like manage their emotions about it, because again, that's part of the boundary is this is what I'm setting. I'm sorry how you feel, but this is what I need to do for myself. And then as that, again, it gets easier and easier.
Yeah, absolutely. You may not, I'm going to say it this way. If you've not been setting boundaries for so long, the person's been used to that. So they may not even not be okay. Like, they may not feel negatively about it, but it's uncomfortable.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because now we're doing something different, right? We're not meeting their needs. We're not, catering to them. We're asking for our needs to be met.
Yes.
And it may also be a negative situation for them. So just knowing they may not, what you ask for may not align with what they want, and that is okay, right?
Yeah.
I've already touched on this, but being very specific with your request, very simple. And I use this I statement. When I see, hear, feel, whatever, I'm going to say see, hear, like kind of like when I hear you make comments about other people's bodies in my present, I feel a lot of guilt. It makes me think you're talking to me, and it makes me uncomfortable. And I would like for you to not make those comments around me. Nothing about the only, like, don't make those comments around me. Not like when you're making these shitty comments. No, it's I. So think I, X, IYIZ. When I experience X, I feel, I think, I perceive Y, and I'm asking you to do Z. Simple.
Yeah.
There's no finger pointing there. It's my perception. It's my reality. And I'll give you an example. I interrupt this episode to invite you to our absolutely free webinar, Food and Body Reset for 2025. This webinar will be on December 30th at 9 a.m. Pacific Standard Time. And I'm basically going to walk you through a mini version of the mindset method where you can walk away understanding the underlying mental health, psychological struggles that you have, those patterns that keep you from achieving whatever goals you want to set out for yourself, but also walk you through how we create our norms. And I'm going to give away some free gifts at the end that's going to make this process easier for you. This will also be featured on our podcast. So you get to be on the podcast if you do attend. I'd love for our listeners, for your friends, family, anyone who you feel would benefit from this opportunity to receive free coaching from me to attend. So check out the show notes below for the link where you can sign up. Again, this is completely free. It will be featured on the podcast as an episode, so you can actually be on our podcast if you'd like. So that again is December 30th at 9 a.m. Pacific Standard Time. Now, back to the show. My husband, we have very beautiful white marble counters in our house. Very beautiful. And he's a bit messy when he makes things, but he also cooks like 15 of our meals each week. What I've asked for specifically is anything that stains, marinara, strawberries, chocolate, to be exact. Please clean them up in a timely manner, right? And one day I was like, okay, strawberries, I'll clean it up. A couple days later, chocolate in the morning because he makes chocolate chip pancakes. And chocolate's still there in the evening. And I'm like, hey, I've asked you to clean this up. I'm curious to why this is like a struggle. That caused an argument, right? So I had to sit with it and be like, okay, how can I do that better?
Mm-hmm.
When I see the smears, the stains on the counters, I get worried that it's going to ruin the counters, and I like the counters, right? And I ask that they be cleaned up in a timely manner. It's not you suck, you forgot to do this. Like I worry because these are very expensive counters. Like, don't fuck them up without saying that. So that's the
Thanks for listening, Mark.
Yes. I've already talked to him about it. So this is one I put in here too. I feel overwhelmed when I'm expected to stay late at gatherings because I value my rest. What I need is to leave by 8 p.m.
Right.
Easy.
I feel like I could have wrote that.
I know. This is great. Number 4, hit him with it.
Ask without apology. So just like we were talking before, is set the boundary. Don't try and over-explain. Don't try and apologize for setting a boundary, because then you're just people pleasing, which goes into the lack of boundaries that you probably had in the first place. So just say, I've got this, and it's a form of self-respect for yourself. It's a form of building self-esteem. It's a form of self-worth. It's a form of respecting the relationship and being clear on that, right? So if you're not telling them I have this boundary, like for example, with Michael, if it was like when we have the late nights with his family, if I just was like, I'm piecing out, then that is perceived as disrespectful. But I respect our relationship enough to tell him and talk to him about that rather than assume that he knows that I'm out of gas, right? Because we don't want to assume anything with any relationship. Like going back to the aunts and uncles and family members that talk about body, we don't want to assume that they're talking about you because you're perceiving that way. But it certainly, you are allowed to feel that way, but it doesn't mean it's true. And I can set the example without accusing them or without asking them to apologize for their behavior. Because if you
don't have to apologize for asking them.
No. And so no one has to apologize really. We can apologize for saying, oh shit, I didn't think of it that way. I'm sorry that, I will try and work on that with you for this boundary that you're setting. But you don't want to expect an apology, because if you don't get it, you're going to be really disappointed. And then that's going to take away from your power of setting that boundary.
Well, and I think that goes into this number 5, which is like have clear expectations.
Yes.
And
yeah. Oh yeah.
Having expectations of this person may not understand. I know what my limits are, and having clear expectations on your limits, like what you will and will not put up with. I was talking to a client last night who I'm working on boundaries with, and I was like,
Mhm.
well, we were talking about all of this, and I said, think about someone who like sets really good boundaries with you. Like, how does that make you feel? She's like, actually, I have a friend, and she'll tell me like, I can't do this right now, but this is what I can do.
Yeah.
She goes, I feel it just makes me feel really good. Or we have very clear communication. And that goes both ways.
Mm-hmm.
Expect that they have limits too.
Right.
Right. And if you kind of know we're not dealing with someone who's emotionally mature, your expectations might be like they may not meet this expectation.
Mhm.
However, my asking for it is me trusting myself and standing up for myself, right? And
Right.
standing up for my needs. And that is the more important part than if, yes, we want to change, right? And if someone's unable to do that, then the boundary will change too, right? So you
Yeah.
may be asking for this like verbal boundary of like not talking about something, but if they keep doing it, now we might have a physical boundary where
Right.
I don't come. Like I feel uncomfortable. I don't come to the things.
Right.
I think I've talked about this on here.
Yes.
I uninvited my mom to my wedding.
No, you did not talk about that. I thought you were going to bring up something else.
No. She kept doing this thing where she was like, this isn't what you want. Why are you're listening to everyone else? And I'm like, hey, guess what? This is not just my wedding.
Yeah.
Not just my wedding.
Right.
I'm listening to my husband,
Yeah.
future husband. And all I need from you, and I said this multiple times, is to feel excited and happy for me. That's
Mhm.
all you need to do. Be accepting of my choices. And great. If you can't do that, then don't come.
Right. So that goes into a point number 6 of accept if the person cannot agree.
Yes. She
So
agreed.
like well, but say she didn't, say she was like, no, absolutely not. Then your boundary is, okay, then I don't need you physically there because of the emotional aspect you would take on this.
Emotional sucking you would have
Yeah.
sucked out of it.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. Acceptance if that person cannot agree, right? Like we're talking about, they have their own needs, their own limitations,
Mhm.
right? And then you're bringing like, I don't understand, like, why can't they just, because they
They won't.
can't.
Right.
Let them.
I would say, and honestly, the more boundaries you start setting. Now, this isn't to say like I have all these boundaries, like to use it as a crutch, but the more boundaries that you start setting, the more likely you're likely to engage with people who aren't going to agree with you. Right. Especially again, if it's uncomfortable for them or you're challenging kind of these long sought traditions that you
Mhm.
don't want to fall in line with anymore.
Or patterns of relating too.
Yeah, it gets like from my, not going into specifics, but from my experience of once someone starts setting boundaries or starts saying no to things, which is a boundary in itself, or saying I'm not going to do that, then it's sometimes comments get made more and more and more. It's not up for you to appease so that the comments go away. It's more so to say like, if they need to talk to me about this, they have all the opportunity to. And if I
Mhm.
can't make them talk to me about this, I can say, is there something we should talk about? And if they say no and back off, then that's it. Right.
Right.
So
Right.
if just because they're not necessarily largely disagreeing, their comments or side chats may be
Passive
their lack
aggressive
of
disagreement.
agreement. Yeah.
Yeah. Be careful of that
Yeah.
passive aggressive like disagreement. And like we talked about, like, don't take that rejection personally. That's
Right.
number 7. It is them. Understand where you end and they begin.
Yes.
Their projection of you standing in your truth
Mm-hmm.
is a view into their own insecurity.
Mm-hmm.
And you don't have to hold that shit.
Right.
That's why the book's called Don't Hold Their Poop.
Yep.
You can say, that's not my shit. I have my own shit.
Right.
I'm setting boundaries so that I can change those patterns of relating that you talked about, or those traditions that I can't do, or whatever the shit is. I don't need yours.
Mm-hmm.
And not taking it personally, having compassion to think. Compassion doesn't mean that we have to approve of how they're acting. It's just, wow, this person really can't let this go. And I'm
Right.
really sad for them.
Yeah.
And that's it.
I
I'm
think a
sad.
good example if I have is from one of the clients that I've coached. Her mom continually crossed a boundary of what she would just comment on body wise. And the clients told her, back off, essentially, in a nice way. I'm summarizing this. And she would take the comments personally, like a personal attack. And I asked her, I said, did you ever consider maybe this is how your mom feels about herself and that she sees you as the example of what she doesn't want within herself? And she was like, I never thought of that. I'm like, more likely than not, this is your mom's issue, not your issue. And she's giving it to you and you're holding her shit instead of just saying no.
Right.
And so then when she brought up the boundary, mom, of course, was a little bit resistant to the thought of like, hey, you say this a lot. Did you ever consider it's not a me thing, it's a you thing? And so when we had the conversation but prior to that of like, remember when you push back or when you set that boundary, it's not the rejection of it is not a you thing, it's a them thing. So you're already working on not taking it personally, and you're already working on like how to better yourself. We don't need to let her creep back in by letting the rejection kind of dismantle what you're trying to do, if that makes sense.
No, absolutely. And again, this just bleed into each other so nicely. Like number 8 is then taking responsibility for you then. Like if mom is unable to do it, you're going to have to figure out a backup plan to meet your needs independently, independent of mom.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Because at the end of the day, like I said, if you've got to leave, that's what you do.
Right.
Right. If mom can't seem to stop with these comments, you've taken it the step further and help mom understand it's her own stuff. She's not able to move forward in a healthy way. You're responsible for then getting your needs met. And that might mean taking space, limiting, changing conversation. But you have to accept that. I want to say it this way. If they don't meet your needs, we're not sitting there having a fucking pity party for ourselves.
Right. Like,
move
on.
Well, this keeps happening and I just can't because my mom. It's like, so what? Now what? You've tried. She can't. You have to.
Right.
That's it. You have to do it now.
Well,
And
go ahead. Sorry.
that's it. Actually, I have
I
nothing
was
else.
going to say that goes into, because you're talking about how to meet your own needs for yourself and that you will, is number 9 is the self-care. So how do we replenish our emotional energy? So for me, for example, going back to holidays with Michael's family, is I replenish my energy by spending time for myself. I read at night when I go to bed after I've left early the party, or I go to the gym in the morning. I spend time like that. Just makes me, that's my self-care. For someone else's self-care, that might be journaling, it might be going for a walk, it might be meditating, all the things that we've talked about in our self-care episodes. And so it's important that you, 1, reflect on the situation, 2, to realize like it's not a me thing if they reject this, or if they accept it, like how proud you are that you stood your ground and stood like made that boundary happen too. So either way, whether it's an acceptance or rejection, there is a need to reflect and say, that was really wonderful that I did that. But then to also say, because setting that boundary, and this sounds really corny and silly, but like using the energy to say, hey, this is how it is for me, XYZ, blah, blah, blah. This is what I like to see. That takes a lot of energy. And it may not be like a physical energy like you get from working out or from like doing a bunch of errands or something like that. But there is a huge mental energy that we need to replenish. And so how do you do that? And so that's something I want clients and those listeners to remember as well.
Yeah. And then, we need to like let it go and move forward. Right. Yeah. Again, it's like not that pity party. We're not, after setting the boundary, we're not ruminating. We're not over analyzing. We need to trust that you've done what you need to do. If you followed these steps, you've done it in the right way.
Right.
And we move forward with life. It's people get caught up. It sucks. Listen, I know it sucks. Listen. I know what it feels like to ask for your needs to be met over and over and over again and someone make it about themselves.
Right.
I know. It fucking sucks. But at the end of the day, I accept that I'm going to, now I have a different relationship with this person because they've done their own healing. But for even now, it's still hard. Like it's still hard for me to ask for my needs to be met, and I've had to say, hey, can you, because my mom will text me
Mhm.
Or no, she'll call me, then text me. I'm like, please stop doing that. Because my dad's sick.
Mhm.
So when you fucking call me and text me,
It makes
what am I
me,
thinking?
yeah, more anxious and worried.
Yes. She's like, oh no. She like sends me a text. I'm like, just text me. Yeah, just text me
Yeah.
what you need, especially during work hours. I've talked about her on here before. There's a gal that I follow that like talks about like boundaries at work, like with
Yeah.
your boss in corporate America. And she did one with her dad because her dad's like it was hilarious. It was like working from home while visiting your parents, and the
Yeah.
dad just kept walking in and like doing
Hello.
all these
Hello.
things.
Good
Yeah.
morning. Yeah.
So,
'Cause it's fun.
you
You
know,
like your job.
right. He was like doing push-ups. It was
Yeah.
great. All right. So just to go over them. Number 1, know what you want. Number 2, give yourself permission to ask for it. Be specific and simple with your request using I statements. Ask without apology. Have clear expectations, both of yourself and the other person. Accept if they cannot agree. Don't take rejection personally. Then, if you are rejected, take responsibility for your own wants and needs. Practice self-care, let go, and move forward.
Yep.
Now, this holiday season, you may only be able to get to number 3, and that's still progress.
Mhm.
Right? Then we add to it. Another way to do this is practice it with something simple, right? Practice it with a cup of coffee that you want, or with your spouse that feels safe. Practice it with someone safe first. Get the reps,
Mhm.
and then try to practice it with someone not safe. Yeah, or perceived someone who's got their own shit. Anything else?
No.
I love this. Love this conversation. I hope you guys love it too. If you love this conversation, please give us a follow or subscribe to our channels. We love 5-star ratings and reviews. That helps us get out to more people. If you like this information and you have that one friend that has no boundaries, share it with her. What a great gift. Give us a follow on Instagram, Mindset of Matter Coaching, fitbyamanda.az, and also on YouTube, the Mindset Mirror Connection podcast, and the Mindset of Matter, and Amanda's prenatal. And no, just kidding. What is it again? Say your YouTube.
Linked. Yeah, they're pregnancy
they're
and
all linked on this.
postpartum. They're all linked together, so no worries on Googling it, individual ones.
Awesome. If you are someone who wants specific help around this, setting boundaries is a big part of the mindset method, and being able to set all of these types of boundaries, especially around your self-care and your commitment to yourself. Check out the show notes for our Clarity Call link, where we can talk to you about all of our programs. And just remind yourself, at the end of the day, setting boundaries is a part of your self-esteem, your self-image, and we want you to remember this on top of that.
What you say in the mind.
You see in the mirror. Great transition. Goodbye.
Bye.